Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Bob Onder representing District 2 in St. Charles County. Mr. Chairman, last year has been a challenging time for our state and for the country. COVID-19 has taken thousands of lives and made many more sick. At the same time, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that COVID-19 has been the most politicized disease in human history. The pandemic was used, for example, by judges and politicians as an excuse to undermine election integrity laws in many states, with effects on the last election that have undermined public confidence in our democratic institutions. But what has gained the most attention and profoundly affected the lives of citizens throughout our country have been the many extreme and far-reaching health orders at all levels of government. These health orders have shuttered businesses, caused people to lose their jobs, interfered with religious worship, delayed diagnosis and treatment of serious diseases, caused months or years of loss of educational attainment, and contributed to increased levels of substance abuse, suicide, and depression. Many have questioned, is the cure worse than the disease? There is a role, of course, for public health professionals. The Office of Public Health Officer was enabled by statute in 1949. But legislators serving in these halls in 1949 could scarcely have imagined the far-reaching, arbitrary, and hypocritical actions taken in the name of public health over the past year. Examples abound, but include shutting down churches when other gatherings of the same size were allowed, mask mandates, a county executive shutting down school sports, except the one his son participated in. The same county executive shutting down restaurants in his county, and at the same time crossing the river to a neighboring county to eat at a restaurant. Our public health officials have had broad power in the name of public health on a variety of issues. These over the years have included temporarily shutting down restaurants when there were cases of hepatitis A. They've included health orders during floods or tornadoes. They've included distributing vaccines, treating sexually transmitted diseases. But in our system of government, we did not intend to make these health officials absolute dictators. Do they, for instance, for a respiratory virus with a 99.7% survival rate, have an absolute right to shut down churches and small businesses, tell us who we can visit in the hospital or after our wives have a baby, or even to celebrate Christmas or high holy days with our families? Even if your answer to all these questions is yes, then I'd ask you, what are the limits of their power? Do our health officials have the power to close down McDonald's in the name of public health? Do they have the power to ban trans fats or high fructose corn syrup? What about banning smoking in our homes? What about implementing Dr. Fauci's idea of banning Thanksgiving or Christmas or shaking hands? In this pandemic, bureaucrats have too often had an extreme myopic focus on COVID case numbers and not taken into account the costs of their actions. And too few of them have had a proper sense of the limits of government in a constitutional republic. Needless to say, this topic is the subject of intense interest here in the General Assembly. I'm going to give a brief overview of the approach some of my colleagues and I have taken on this issue. There are several bills, including my own, that bar state or political subdivisions from putting any greater restriction on religious worship than on other services or meetings. Now, this would appear to be a common sense application of the First Amendment of our Constitution, but it has been extensively litigated, including multiple times to the U.S. Supreme Court. And governors in California, and New Jersey, and New York have been very aggressive at shutting down religious services. Thankfully, on November 25th, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a ruling in the case of Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn versus Cuomo, upholding the First Amendment right to worship. As Justice Gorsuch put it, while the pandemic poses many grave challenges, there is no world in which the Constitution tolerates color-coded executive edicts that reopen liquor stores and bike shops, but shutter churches, synagogues, and mosques. Other bills, including Senator Bratton's, Senator Koenig's, make it clear that no, Dr. Fauci, you cannot tell us who we can visit in our private homes. Several of the bills require that the governing body of a political subdivision adopt health orders. In matters that so nearly touch our lives, our property, and our livelihoods, our accountable elected officials should have the final say on these far-reaching decrees. Finally, we require candidates for county health boards of trustee to actually run for the offices in which they serve. So I look forward to this hearing, to the bill presentations, and to the testimony pro and con. We want to get this right. We want to be able to respond effectively to the next public health emergency and at the same time restore balance required in our system of constitutional government.